So there's an interesting thing when we look at the language of how we refer to, for lack of a term, fighting competition and even sparring in traditional martial arts. Now, doing Chinese martial arts, you may often hear sanda or even sanshu, which is kind of the older term. And the difference being da means to hit and shu means hand, the character. I always do this. The character is a pictogram of the lines on the hand, which is kind of cool. Whereas in Japanese, now I'm not a Japanese scholar, I do know that this is the simplified character. Here, they're not using the traditional character, but the Japanese are weird about their written systems. I mean, they have 3 different written systems and all of that, and that is not my field. But Randori, famously literally translates to like taking chaos, which is maybe not the best or most nuanced meaning. And when Jigoro Kano instituted the idea of Randori competition, he literally translated it as free exercise, which is of course the intended meaning. And when we look at Sanda, it generally gets translated as free fighting. But there's a connection here between the two that I think is interesting, and this kind of dictates some of the thought process behind what's going on, and may give us a clue as to kind of what the intent of these things as exercises is for. So keep in mind, in Chinese, it wasn't always sanda, not free hitting or free fighting, but sanshu, free hand, generally indicating techniques, right? When we say like, this hand, that hand, oftentimes it's a shorthand for saying like it is a hand technique. It is, you are practicing the technique of how to do something, and it tends to be an empty hand technique, similar to how ma, which means horse, becomes shorthand for stance. So when we look at that, the terms san and ran, now ran of course is the Japanese reading, it's not the Chinese reading of it. When san and ran come through, they're of course not perfectly synonymous, but they are related, and this is interesting, right? San literally means to like scatter and disperse, but has kind of a secondary meaning of like unrestricted or even undisciplined. So that's where kind of the free idea comes from when we say free fighting or free technique, free technical practice, free exercise. It is the idea of it is no longer being bound by stylistic dictates or formal bounds dictated by lineage or style or anything like that. You are now free to explore and apply as necessary. And that seems to be essentially the same thing that we're looking in Randori. Randori, the idea of it being free exercise, well, Ran can mean disorderly or messy. That's where we get chaos from. But it can also mean like at random or arbitrarily. And again, similar, not the same, but similar. And in this case, this may be just a preferential difference in how to phrase things. But again, what you're looking at is people engaged in Randori being able to arbitrarily make decisions. That is, they're able to make decisions on their own without some kind of external guidance as to what they're supposed to be doing. Now, the fact is that Sanda, Sanshu, and Randori, depending on what styles are engaged in it and whatnot, all have different formats, and Aikido is wrong. But the fact is that when we look at these, what they really come down to is it's free exercise. It's essentially free sparring. In the karate world, they often use the term kumite for sparring, which doesn't always mean free sparring. In fact, I mean, there's multiple types. There's 1-step and 3-step and 5-step and all that. But then there's Jiu Kumite, which is, of course, free sparring. And kumite means grappling hands, by the way. So another interesting thing about karate, right? Close range art, lots of grappling techniques. It is more than just kickboxing. But when you look at these things, what are we really looking at? what we're looking at is it's still an exercise, it's still practice. And even in the sporting environment, it is still practice. It is a chance for you to be technical, but being technical without the bounds of pre-arranged, pre-scripted movements. And that is a very, very important part of your training, and it is part of why sparring is very, very important for your training. It is not the only part of training, and it can't be the only part of training, but it is important to your training for the fact that you never develop any fight IQ if you never learn how to read your opponent and make decisions in real time. And while we cannot safely condone ramping up the stakes in-house, you're not going to have any students left. You're not going to have any training partners left if you're constantly trying to knock them out, break bones, assault them with weapons, and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that even just as bare bones progression goes, the whole purpose of this free exercise, of this essentially play, is for you to explore your techniques with the added component of decision making, with the added component of reading somebody in real time and making that decision on the fly. That is what these things are for, and that is why it is so important. In fact, that is why it's really, really important not to go so overboard all the time, just bashing each other's brains in, because it's not always just about the stress response. A lot of time it is about building up that technical library within the context of the decision-making aspect. Because if you can't make those decisions on the fly, then you don't have a game, period. So the fact is that when we look at this stuff, right, modern day, just as a side note here, I know this is a tangent, you've been around a while, you know what I do. When you say Sanda, people immediately go into the actual sport, wushu Sanda, professional Sanda, all that. But back in the day, the concept of Sanshu really just referred to the free exercise, within your style or even between styles, similar to the old Lei Tai matches or the behind closed doors, the underground Beimo matches. Beimo being martial comparison, basically being challenge matches. Lei Tai matches being public challenge matches. It's the same kind of concept, but the idea of Sanshu is it's free play. It is a chance for you to then be outside of the bounds of the formal drills, the forms, and all of that, and get into being able to make decisions and apply in real time. And that is a really, really important thing for all of us to be able to be doing. And of course, those involved in sport martial arts already know this. But those involved in traditional martial arts often put these things aside in favor of just drilling. And while drilling is very important, without that added component of play, you just don't get those decision-making abilities. And that's such an important part. I personally like to end class with 10 to 15 minutes of free play. It doesn't always have to be 100% just pure sparring. It can be focused. It can be free play within the bounds of kickboxing. It can be free play within the bounds of chi sao. It can be free play within the bounds of a bully drill, where it's basically non-equal sparring. One person has full free reign to do whatever they want, like by street thug or MMA rules, and the other person is set on a smaller portion of their skills. You're trying to make something work, but within those bounds you are free to decide. You are unrestricted within those bounds to apply as necessary. You do not have to follow a specific order or sequence. And I think those are very, very important things. And I think that is a fantastic way to end class. And you can keep that really light, or you can allow it to go heavy if somebody's prepping for a competition, especially if they're in the early stages of prepping for competition. But very, very important practice. We see it Chinese and Japanese both. I know I did the hand backwards, but you get what I'm saying. We see it in Chinese and Japanese both, but it is more than just. It's more than just sparring. It is an exercise. It is a drill of its own. It's just not formulated and scripted. it is unrestricted or arbitrary and at random. All right, guys, that's enough for today. I will talk to you guys later. Good journey. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share, give the dog a bone. You can follow us on our other social media accounts, and if you really like us, you can head over to Amazon and buy a shirt. You can also go over to Gumroad and purchase some of our instructional courses. All of the links will be provided and also on our website. If you happen to be in the Phoenix area, we would love to meet you. Come drop in for a class, even just to chat. And if you're looking for a new home, we would be happy to have you. So until next time, good journey.